Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is a special episode. I'm going to call it Return to Planet Haven. Before I get started, real quick, anybody interested in supporting our work here on Astral Club can go to a link in the description for Patreon, and I thank everyone who has done so. Next up, if you're interested in astral projection lessons, there will be an email in the description where I can supply you with the necessary information. And lastly, I just want to mention playlists. I have a number of playlists on the site. If you've got some time and you're masochistic enough to want to binge on Astral Club videos, you'll find a number of playlists, not only ones like Astral Club that has all of the videos, but there's a Q&A playlist, there's an Aliens playlist, there's an Astral Guide School playlist, and a number of other themed playlists that, depending on your interest level, you can check out and just listen to them to your little heart's content. Okay, let's get started. I had a lot of interest in the visitation to that higher evolved planet. And I talked about it in my reincarnation, trap, prison, or school. And I guess I should have expected a lot more interest. I didn't get into a lot of detail because I didn't spend an awful lot of time there. I was just looking for an example of a more evolved planet. And I wanted to use that information as part of this video. But since then, I've gotten a lot of questions about that particular planet. And I decided to go back to see if I could get some more information that I could use to satisfy the curiosity of the people who've been asking about it. Now, first up, let's mention the word. I have since named this planet Haven because when I went back, I asked them the name of the planet and they gave me a series of musical notes, sound vibrations, which is impossible to translate into English. So throughout this video, you might hear me mention Haven, but keep in mind that's my name. And of course, Haven means a place of shelter or refuge. So this morning, I attempted to get out of my body, and it was much more difficult than usual. Now, recently I reminded people that they shouldn't give up just because their first astral projection failed. The first time I tried to get out, I didn't get past my bedroom door. I had to go back into my body and get out again a total of 5 times before I was finally able to break free and get into space and find that vibration of that wonderful planet that I had talked about in the reincarnation video. When I finally did arrive there, I sent out a signal because I landed pretty much the same place I'd been before, which was near a large body of water. I looked around a little bit because there wasn't anyone there immediately. And in the distance, I saw some beautiful mountains. I didn't see grass, but I did see plants everywhere of different types of descriptions. I'm no ethnobotanist, though, so it's hard to describe. Certainly, once again, the colors were just so vibrant. The variety of purples and blues and the greens that just seemed so alive and fluorescent. Just looking at the colors helped me to raise my vibratory level. Usually, I have to concentrate on feelings of love or joy. But just looking at these colors, soaking in the just the air of that place, it's just thinking about it now sends chills up my spine. It just energized me. it wasn't that long before a few entities showed up. And just as they had before, they took on a semi-humanoid type appearance. But I asked them, they didn't have to do that for my benefit. I could and was able to deal with other forms of intelligent life, unlike perhaps others who exist in my particular typical evolutionary vibratory level like we have here on Earth. And when they did so, they turned into, how do I describe this? It was very plant-like. They had numerous appendages that could easily be described as limbs. There were no fingers, though. Each one of the limbs ended in a type of leaf that looked like it could be folded into a number of different ways to be used much like we use our hands. Their heads were sort of like a type of pineapple, if you want to look at it that way. It was green though, and there was varieties. Their whole bodies were varieties of tans, browns, and greens with these multiple tentacles. And I thought on the whole, they were quite beautiful to my eyes. And their bodies shimmered in the light of this planet. I asked them if it was okay if I visited them once again, and if they minded if I asked them some more questions. I told them that back on Earth there is curiosity about my visit to this planet, and that if it was okay with them, I'd like to ask some more questions, and if they wanted to show me around or they had some time to show me around, I'd certainly be very grateful. They were extremely receptive, much more receptive than they were on my first visit. I think I established some rapport last time. It's interesting. I asked them about their history. How did they come to this place in evolution? And they explained to me that they could trace back their lineage millions of our Earth years. I projected to them quickly how we measured time, and so they were able to calculate fairly quickly that it was millions of years. Now, they weren't always in this form. In fact, on the planet that they evolved on, Haven, there were no animals. And perhaps that's why they were a little concerned about me when I first arrived. I don't know if there's an atavistic type of attitude between plants and animals. Maybe that's just my prejudices though. Because on their planet, there were no animals. There had never been any animal life. Indeed, the entire planet was filled, both on land and in the sea, with plants. They had first evolved in their oceans and then eventually came onto the land and occupied the land. They did have predators, though, in the form of insects. There was quite a diverse insect life on this planet. And there was an insect in particular that preyed upon their ancient ancestors. These insects, they projected what it looked like to me. It was about the diameter of a US quarter dollar. The Canadians will understand that. For anyone else, certainly the Americans, anyone else, it would be about 25 millimeters in diameter. It was a very flattish type insect with a little bump kind of in the middle, and underneath it, it had a series of barbs. And what it would do is it would attach itself to the plant life, including their very ancient ancestors. And these barbs would penetrate into the plant and suck out the vital fluids that these plants needed to survive. Apparently, over the millennia, somewhere along the line, they developed a defense mechanism where they would use sound to mask their presence from these insects. Somewhere along the line, they figured one or two or whatever of the plants figured this out. Then their root system began to become interconnected with other plants of their species. And in this way, in a very primitive animalistic way, but still in a semi-intelligent way, they were able to pass this new information onto other members of their species till they got to the point where, as a whole, they were able to mask their presence from their primary predator. Now, from time to time, as insects are wont, the insects would advance and figure out a way around it. They would then change their sonic vibratory cloaking device, if you will, to protect them. So there was this whole arms race that went on. And in the process, and the deep time that I got from them is hard for we humans to quite appreciate. After all, our ancestors directly go back, 250,000 years or so. At any rate, they became more and more aware, more intelligent, more cooperative, because they had to stay on their toes, so to speak, because there was this arms race. They were trying to prevent these insects that were growing in their own way to overcome these defenses, while they had to counter them. So eventually they got to a point where they were becoming very cooperative, and indeed they were able to become almost a united consciousness, where they became self-aware as a species together all at once. And it was a momentous event for them. There's nothing I can use in our human history to give an example of what they went through. We're very individualistic here. We think of ourselves at best in tribal types of ways, but we consider ourselves first as individuals. But for them, they reached a certain point, a certain interconnected level where their consciousness just rose, and they were able to use their new complete consciousness to defeat this enemy once and for all. And eventually that insect species went extinct. Now, today they feel badly about that, but it's one of the things that they did to survive in their early history. Once that occurred and they achieved this level of evolution, they began to use their unified intellect and their ability to control sound vibrations to terraform the area around where their species was, and then eventually the entire planet. As they grew over the millennia in intelligence and in consciousness, that sound vibrational work not only affected their surroundings, but it affected them. It changed them from a purely plant-based life form to a plant/energetic life form that used this sound energy now as part of its genetic makeup. And that's what gave them mobility. They were finally able to move about their planet, but they still were able to maintain the overall connection because now it was a psychic connection, a wireless connection, if you will. If the roots previously were wired connection, now they use these sound vibrations to constantly communicate. And I said, I don't hear any sound vibration. And they said, oh, yes, it's everywhere. And they asked my permission if they could adjust me, is the term they used. So I said, yes, please do so. And I gave them permission to go into my body and adjust me in such a way that I suddenly heard this enormous symphony of sound that seemed to be everywhere. And at first, I was overcome with too much stimulation. So they sensed that and kind of toned it down, much like someone might take a volume knob and turn it down from its maximum level. And I said, what is this? That's our communication web. It's how we are connected with one another. Obviously, I was extraordinarily blown away by all of this. And as I was listening, they made a comment and they said, we noticed that as we merged with you briefly, that there is what term did they use? A soul wound in you that is recent. And I said, yes, I had suffered the loss of some friends recently. They were extremely sympathetic, and I thanked them for that. But more than that, they asked me if I would like their help in healing or helping to heal this wound. And I said, most definitely, yes, please. So I followed them and we walked. I don't know how far we walked. It was very quick. We floated very quickly and I just had to follow them along. And we came to this quartz crystal mountain, and I could see that it had been excavated. They told me that it was a healing temple for them, although I sensed it was a lot more than that. And that's some of the frustration sometimes when you're dealing with alien species. You're communicating back and forth. You get the basic substance of what they're talking about, but you just have a feeling you're missing the greater character of it. And that can be a little frustrating. So for me, I interpret it as a healing temple. And they told me they had excavated it quite easily using sound, which seemed incredible to me because we walked through this long hallway that had been beautifully cut and smoothly. There wasn't a single rough edge that I could see. It looked to me like there was some sort of a smooth bore that had gone through. But they told us that it was pure sound focused to excavate this hallway. And then when we emerged into the greater chamber, which was circular, and I would say it was probably the diameter of a football field, which is what 100 yards or so, and in meters, I don't know what that is in meters, maybe 90 something like that. But it was enormous, and it was a very cathedral like. I don't know how high it went up. It went very high up. So here we are, and the feeling of being inside of this quartz crystal cathedral was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. Just the feeling of being in there, it felt purely beautiful. I've never felt quite that well, quite that high, if you want to use that term. I could tell I was vibrating at an extremely, extremely high level just being inside of this place. And a group of my friends surrounded me and they began to, let's say, sing. It was a series of sound vibrations, but the vibrations and the sound echoing off of the crystal hit me in ways that felt physical. It felt like I was being penetrated by these sound waves. And it felt like, so frustrating sometimes, but it was like darkness was being pushed out of me, like a wound, a jagged wound was being healed, like I was being reborn, like skin that was dead was being sloughed off. I began feeling like I was virtually pure energy myself. At one point, I had to ask them to please stop because it was becoming too much. I was reaching a level where I felt that I could just free myself now of any relation to the physical being and just advance forward from here. And I knew I couldn't do that because I still have work left here on this plane. And believe me, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to ask, because everything inside me wanted to say, yes, please, keep doing this, keep doing this. I want to continue ascending. At my request, they toned it down and eventually stopped. I felt buzzing. The closest thing I can tell you to that people listening to this recording might understand is, that vibratory, the sense of vibration, the vibratory level you have before you leave your body. Jack that up 100 times, and that's how I was feeling. Every cell in my astral body was just humming. I felt more alive than I'd ever felt. With that, I was escorted out of the chamber, and we returned back to the spot where I had arrived. As my vibratory level began to sink, I felt a loss unlike anything I've ever felt before. And I could sense that I was going to be called back to my body shortly. Anyone who astral projects, if you've done it enough, you can sense a few seconds at least before the callback is going to come. So I quickly thanked them with everything within my being, and they said I was quite welcome to return whenever I liked. And then they also said something very peculiar. They said, if you wish, we will continue to monitor you to ensure that you are safe and able to complete your mission. I said, of course, thank you. I thank you from every every bit of my being. I am grateful to you. With that, I was pulled back into my physical body and I awoke. And that was the experience. So I hope that helps people who are interested in learning more about this planet that I am calling Haven, because I can't replicate their words for it because the sound vibrations are just beyond my ability to replicate. If you liked that video, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please, I'd be very interested in your questions and your comments. Don't forget the playlists. And remember, there's 2 videos a week. One at Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and one Saturday morning at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.